Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and unfortunately, PK could not join us tonight. She is not feeling well. She is at home with back trouble, so if you want to send her any healing prayers, she would just love to accept them from you. I know you used to pray for her all the time when she had this going on for months, but she's been pretty well up until recently. So we'll miss her tonight, and we hope she's feeling better. And we have a guest that she should be listening to because it's all about a new kind of healing. So our guest tonight is Dr. Leskowitz. Now, he's in my neck of the woods here in Massachusetts, I'm happy to say, and he has a new book out. We're going to show you this new book that he has. It's terrific. Now, he's retired after serving as a consultant psychiatrist for over 25 years with the pain management program at Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital in Boston, where he also founded the Integrative Medicine Task Force. I love it. He holds an appointment at Harvard Medical School and has studied energy healing, meditation, and hypnosis for over 40 years, presenting workshops nationally and internationally on the integration of subtle energy techniques and theories with the allopathic medical model. He has written widely for medical and lay audiences, with over 50 articles being published in leading scientific journals. He also has edited 3 textbooks and his documentary film about group energies and sports, The Joy of Socks, Weird Science, and the Power of Intention, was broadcast on PBS stations in the fall of 2012. The Mystery of Life Energy is his latest book, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. This is one of our favorite topics. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you here. You know, we're big proponents of alternative healing and that energy is real. We need to start coming from a different place in our whole healing and the way we look at it, because the way we're looking at it is making people sicker, in our opinion. But how did you get into this, from psychiatry to this?
Well, I can't really say where it all started, where I took that wrong turn that led me away from the from the mainstream medical model. Because I grew up like a science nerd. I was good at math and science and got a lot of praise for that. So high school and college, I was a pre-med. But I think the important thing was I took some time off after college before going to medical school, and just went away and did traveling and saw other parts of the world and met my wife and just opened my mind, so that when I came back to medical school, it was almost like the trance had been broken, and I could look at it from an outside point of view and see that there were problems. I mean, I think everybody goes into medicine because they're curious about what causes illness and what can we do to make people healthy. But one of the most common words I learned right from the start in medical school is the word idiopathic. A lot of the diseases that we were studying, the lecturers would say, this is a case of idiopathic blah, blah, blah. And it turns out idiopathic, it sounds very impressive, but actually means we don't know what's going on. And so, they, just in the labels, they admitted it. So, I learned all the pieces of the machinery, because it's really a mechanical model, that human beings are very complicated machines, but there's nothing about consciousness or energy. They haven't figured that out yet. So the closest I could come to it was through psychiatry, because, well, this was back in the 80s, where psychiatry still paid a lot of emphasis to psychotherapy and talking. It was just starting to get into medications, but not at all resembling what's happened to the field now with so much focus on medication. So I was doing, I did my residency in that, and my first job was actually working in the VA hospitals treating post-traumatic stress with veterans. We didn't really have the greatest treatment approaches, but at least we could look at the mind and the body together and how stress affected things. But what really made the difference for me was when one of my friends invited me to a lecture on healing, which actually totally rubbed me the wrong way because I was raised secular Jewish, but healing brought up, Jesus and the laying on of hands, and it just I didn't resonate with it, but I trusted my friend. So I went to the lecture, and it was a woman based in Los Angeles who came out to give talks, and she worked with the medical community there to use her energy healing skills and her diagnostic skills, which were clairvoyance. I mean, she could perceive energy. So I was ready to walk out, but after 5 minutes, I was sold. This is Reverend Rosenbriere, and she really was the real deal. So fortunately, she had a system where she came east twice a year for 5-day intensives, and I studied with her for a number of years in the mid to late 80s, and that was just like a whole other a whole other way of looking at health and illness. And just the energy piece was what was missing to connect mind and body. So from that perspective, the clinical work that I did always had an energy component to it. I ended up going from the VA into pain management. And this was working with chronic pain patients. And they're interesting in the sense that these are people who have been failed by the medical system, that nothing works. They've tried all the medicines, all the nerve blocks, all the surgeries, and they still hurt. And so they're willing to try anything. And the system says, oh, go ahead. If you want to teach them to meditate, what's that can happen? Relaxed. No. Yeah. So we had a great opportunity at Spalding to try these things. And it was everything from acupuncture to, Barbara Brennan healing, tapping, if you know that,
yes.
EFT approach. So we had good results with that, and it was really, I think, very important to have done that. But there was enough interest in the hospital and then in the network that we formed this group, the Integrative Medicine Task Force. It's now called Integrative Health, which is an important shift in words because medicine kind of there's always something wrong and you got to fix a problem, whereas health is something that you can generate from inside. So that's been a really big initiative that I've, stepped away gradually over the last few years. And fortunately, there's another doctor, Dr. Ariana Vora, who's taken over that. So I'm more a consultant, but I've retired now. But the advantage is you can sort of step back and look at things and write books and be on podcasts and things like that.
Exactly. So, well, you were way ahead of the times.
Yeah, in some ways I was an outlier, and I think that was like when I came back from travels before starting medical school. My cousin taught me how to meditate. He was with the Transcendental Meditation TM program. Yes. So, and I quite liked it. And at the start of medical school, I was really psyched about it. And every lecture I would say, Professor, would meditation help this disease or help? And it was, it was a well-meaning, well-intended question, but there was no research on anything. There were like maybe 2 papers on meditation and the health effects of it. So it was totally shooting in the dark then. And this was 1975 to 1980, around then. Now, oh my God, meditation, there's like literally thousands of articles about the health effects of meditation and the benefits of it. And actually, a lot of it's, I went to University of Massachusetts, just down the road here. And this was when John Kabat-Zinn was just getting started with introducing, the whole idea of meditation. And he's built it into, it's a world famous center now and just a model for everywhere else. So yeah, I was at the leading edge of it, and just it's amazing how things have changed.
It is. And yet at the same time, we're still faced with a lot of push from the pharmaceutical companies to go in that direction. I mean, doctors are really held to this strange standard of care, which has to include, it seems, prescriptions, surgery. That's how you treat this stuff. And so many doctors have talked about being in a bad situation when they try to reach out and do other types of treatments like you're talking about, meditation and yoga. Also, now they're getting more into psilocybin and seeing how much a difference that can make, which is pretty huge.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of some of the really amazing things that have happened, or medical marijuana, for example. When I went to college, it was illegal. And,
Right.
As I like to say to people, unlike President Clinton, I inhaled. And it made a difference. You could see that there are different ways that the mind can operate, and you don't have to be stuck in one particular channel.
A narrow tunnel. Exactly. But there's still a pushback, isn't there? I mean, I know it's all legal here now in Massachusetts, which is great, and other states. But even hearing about Ibogaine and the possibilities with Ibogaine in curing addiction after just one treatment with Ibogaine, but yet it's as illegal in the United States as heroin. So it's very discouraging to know that this outlaw of plant medicine is still in effect. And it's something that could really make a big difference for especially addicts. However, along with addicts, I've been told that Ibogaine, they find, is actually able to cure certain diseases. So that's another benefit of this plant medicine from Africa.
But I think the cat is out of the bag, and I don't think there's any going back. There's too much very promising and exciting stuff happening in all these directions that are not controlled by the pharmaceutical industry. That there's going to be a struggle, because no doubt about it, the pharmaceutical industry has a big, big influence on healthcare in America, from medical education all the way up through, how clinical practices are run. And it is tough to kind of counter that, but the trends are really in a strong, in a positive direction. Like this, just one example is at Harvard, there's people may know of Herb Benson. He was a cardiologist who, it was like 40 years ago, something, came up with the phrase, the relaxation response, for a way of, it was meditation, but he wanted to make it totally non-spiritual and just very, cognitive and secular. So he developed that, and he went on to have quite a bit of influence, to the point where he collaborated with the owner of the Boston Red Sox, John Henry, and they set up this Benson Henry Mind Body Institute. And that became a real foundation that's gotten a lot of credibility within Harvard, to the point where now Harvard medical students learn how to meditate as part of their curriculum.
That's fantastic.
And that's like, thinking back on 50 years ago, that's unheard of. So I'm extremely optimistic, even though it's true that the pharmaceutical industry does have a huge amount of control, and there's a lot of problems with how they run things. I'm very optimistic to seeing that's the benefit of, doing a whole career and stepping back and having a look. I see some very, very positive signs.
That's very encouraging. I'm so glad to hear you say this, because sometimes it just looks like that struggle is never going to end. But you did a very interesting film talking about the Sox. So what was this film? Tell us about it.
Well, I grew up in the Boston area, in a suburb. I'm not a particularly good athlete. I'm not a good athlete, period. But I was a big fan. And I think there's something about Boston that was very psyched about their sports team, and in particular the Red Sox. And for many, many years, the Red Sox just weren't good. And then they came close a few times, but finally in 2004, they actually won the World Series. And that process captivated the whole region, and until they actually went ahead and won it. And it was very interesting, because I could actually see in my patients how their mood improved when the Red Sox won a game. And it was like there was a collective mood, not global, but regional mood. So I was interested in the group energy aspect of it, and I wrote some things about it. I wrote an op-ed that was about the energetics of baseball that was published in the Boston Globe the following year when the Red Sox were doing poorly, and I had some energy suggestions for them. So the title of it was, "Can Weird Science Save the Sox?" And
Great title.
I loved it. And I was thrilled when it got published. I thought, oh, wow, that was great. But
Yeah.
that was the end of it. My cousin was a filmmaker, and he had seen this, and he did some behind the scenes stuff without telling me. And then he called me up and he said, "What are you doing on Saturday?" And I said, "I don't know. What am I doing on Saturday?" He said, "We're going to Fenway Park to start filming our documentary." And I said, "What documentary?" He had actually called the front office and told them about this, and they gave him the okay to come in. And so based on his idea, we went ahead and filmed everything from interviewing players to what it feels like to have fan energy washing over you, how they get into the zone of peak performance, interviewed fans about their different superstitions and what they thought was going on. And we did some measurements too, which I thought was for me was the coolest part of it. Different ways that you can measure some of these collective energies, some of these group energies. And we got some really, really cool results. Just to give you one example, you've probably heard the figure of speech that people are like tuning forks, and a certain emotion will trigger the same emotion in a lot of other people nearby. Yeah. Well, we did one experiment where there's a meditation practice called heart math.
Yes.
It's very simple. All they do is focus on the region of their heart, feel the emotion of appreciation, and imagine that they're breathing in and out through their heart center. It's all silent. And, if you practice enough, you get good at it, and you can go into that state instantly. And there are ways of measuring your heart rate, your heart rhythms, to show that something unique happens when you're in that particular state that doesn't happen when you're just resting or normal attention. Mm-hmm. So the study that we did was, I was a guinea pig. I don't know how to do this technique. So I was the guinea pig, and I was sort of wired up. They put a monitor just by measuring my pulse from my fingertip, or maybe it was my earlobe, I can't remember now, fingertip, I think. They could see whether I was in this state of heart coherence or not. And then at a certain point, some meditators came in, sat behind me, and started meditating. The thing is, I was blindfolded, I had earmuffs on, so I didn't know when they came in or when they got the signal to start meditating. But my nervous system did know, because the heart monitor was going blah, 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 blah. And then as soon as they started, it was like that. It was really quite dramatic. So the idea is that they could set up, the vibration, the vibration, and I would resonate. I would be entrained by their harmonious vibration. So there's all sorts of applications to that, like team chemistry, for example. If you get a team that works harmoniously, they can function so much more effectively, because when you're in this state of alignment, that's when you're in what they call the zone of peak performance. So we made a film of, we filmed.
Can you see that? Because this is now that was back in 2012. Can you still see that somewhere?
Yeah, it's I guess it's funny, you could say now, but at the time we had to pay for a license fee from Major League Baseball to show snippets of the ball games that we included. And so the first run, we made a DVD and sold it, and the normal process. But Major League Baseball charged an incredible amount. It was $25,000 for using like 2 minutes of clips, and I couldn't afford to renew that every 5 years. So it's now available for free on YouTube. Oh. So anybody who wants to watch it, it's you just go to the YouTube, section and type in "The Joy of Sox movie," and it'll come right up. And just as a reminder, Sox is SOX.
Right. Yes. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yes.
How creative. And what a wonderful way to talk about all of this so people understand it.
Well, I think that was one of the key points, that I could talk about all this sort of esoteric stuff in a way that people could relate to. I mean, the funny thing, I do a lot of these presentations at energy medicine and psychology and meditation, mind-body types of conferences, where the people who go are very strong majority are women.
Right.
And they, they're into it. I mean, a lot of people are into it, but then they go home to their engineer husband and he says, "Oh, what kind of garbage did you learn this weekend?" kind of thing.
Isn't that the truth? Yes.
So this was I like to say it was like a Trojan horse that they said, "Oh, baseball, I like baseball," Yeah, there you go. And so that it worked for that sort of crossover appeal, I guess you would say.
Yes.
And then, that one thing led to another. As a result of that, I met up with other sports psychologists and coaches who were interested in these sort of mind-body approaches, and to use sports as a vehicle for spiritual growth and spiritual transformation. And just a little bit of history. For those of you who know about the Esalen Institute in California, that was one of the mecca of the human potential movement for 50, 60 years. And the co-founder of that, Michael Murphy, was very into sports as a form of spiritual practice. And he came up with I guess you call it the slogan, that sport is the yoga of the West.
That sounds very true. Oh my goodness.
It's a really simple and profound statement that you can get just as much, spiritual alignment through, baseball or jogging or weightlifting or whatever as you can through sitting on a meditation retreat. So that was his focus. And we gathered together a group of other psychologists along these lines and formed a group that originally was called the Sports, Energy, and Consciousness Group. And it's now evolved into Evo Sports, Evolutionary Sports Collective. And if people are interested in that, they host monthly seminars with different coaches and trainings in how to use mind-body approach.
Well, somebody just wrote in, women have higher psychic vibrations. It's true. Do you feel that it's easier for women to do this kind of alignment than it is for men?
Well, as a statistical average or generalization, I would say yes. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are some women who are shut down and some men who are opened up, but I think it has to do with, at least in our culture, how we view emotions. And, men are trained to suppress their emotions, but emotions are sort of the carriers for a lot of these energies and subtle energies. So if you're more free recognizing and expressing your emotions, you'll be more in tune with your energetic point of view. So I think to some extent there's truth to that, but I wouldn't write off men totally. I think there's still potential, but as a generalization, I think there's something to it.
Tell us some of the suggestions that you gave to the socks so that they could get into alignment, get into the zone. What did you tell them to do?
Well, I was never in the role of the team consultant to train them on how to do it. I had some suggestions about like doing these group heart math energy suggestions, or there's also some very interesting work with water and the way the human mind can imprint water. And, from the Japanese researcher Emoto to more current research of imbuing healing energy into water so that seeds sprout more quickly and things like that. So I had suggestions like that because the human body is mostly two-thirds water. So that was one of the things that I suggested, and never quite got to the point of being a consultant to the team. I have to say, got almost close. If I had been pushier, I might have been able to make it happen. But the thing I really wanted to do was, before each game, they usually have some, dedication ceremony. Somebody wins a community service award and a presentation or something. So they have like 2 or 3 minutes before the game actually starts with the whole audience there. And I wanted to lead everybody in one of these heart math meditations. Had like 40,000 people do it, but I couldn't quite. If I was doing it again now, I would just throw caution to the winds. But so that's something that I think is definitely possible, to have large group, setting the energetics for for people. But in terms of techniques, one thing comes to mind that I haven't done, but other people in my group have done. It's the therapy technique called tapping that I mentioned briefly. Just for your viewers, there's a school of psychotherapy actually that's developed over the last 30 years or so that combines acupuncture energy with the standard psychology approach of exposure and desensitization to stimuli that upset you. So the person will be thinking about, it could be some argument yesterday that bothered them, and they'll make some statement of self-acceptance, even though I'm still upset at what happened yesterday, I accept myself fully and completely. And then they'll tap on their acupuncture points. And it looks very strange, compared to standard psychology, but very dramatic things happen.
Yes.
Everything from post-traumatic stress to depression. So many people have used this for athletes who get anxious, let's say, and in a choke situation, what leads to choking. And some people have had very dramatic effects. I'll point out one. A psychologist named Greg Warburton, based in Oregon, had worked for many years with the Oregon State University baseball team, because players get nervous, and if they can be just focused on what's happening, they'll do better. And his team, for a period of, there's about 10 years where they were the national leaders. They were in the College World Series more often than any team. They won the championship more often than any team. The sort of dilemma was that they didn't want to give him the credit for two reasons, actually. One was because they'll look very weird.
Oh.
And two, the secret will be out of the bag and the other teams will start.
Yeah.
But his work is out there, and you can find out about it on the website, the evosports.com. So it's happening, and a couple of pro teams are using it too. So it's definitely there.
It's great. So somebody's asking if you have any experience with ayahuasca.
I do not. Marijuana was about as far as I went.
Okay.
And for me, it was more the meditation and group energetics that propelled me to higher consciousness. I haven't used ketamine or ayahuasca or those types. And for some people, it's fabulous. I actually, probably the most powerful way I came to alter my state of consciousness was through reading. I was exposed to some very powerful teachers through reading. A lot of it was channeled, like the Seth material from Jane Roberts, and people like that. And then more recently, there's some not so well-known ones like Alexander from and Abraham, people like that. That I guess that's just the way my mind operates. Is the words could open me up to it and have these realms make sense.
And yes, it's wonderful that we have these teachers like Esther who brings forth Abraham, and
right.
It makes a big difference. And it's wonderful that we have this at our fingertips much more so than ever before. And I've also heard from our senator and representative that it looks like psilocybin is going to be legal or decriminalized. I'm not sure what they're doing, but one or the other here in Massachusetts. It's
going to be on the ballot. I don't know if, I think that's they were circulating the petition everywhere to
yes
on the ballot. And I guess it got the signatures. And this is what's happening. Each state will do it at their own rate, and Utah might be the last one.
Yes, it might.
Now, but there's different sort of subcultures in each region, and they'll come along in their own rate. But it's definitely happening.
Well, apparently there's 10 cities or towns here already in Massachusetts that have taken upon themselves to decriminalize plant medicine. So that's a good start, because there is so much to be gained from that, from everything I've seen and read, and Paul Stamets' work with mushrooms, and the movie How to Change Your Mind, which is excellent and addresses all of these. And ketamine's legal as long as you get a prescription for it, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who are trained in it now, and the important thing is that some studies have been done with outcomes measured, and it's not just somebody saying they had a great experience with it. That's what, and clinical medicine, that's called an anecdotal report. It's not, which, it makes it sound like it's a joke, an anecdote.
Yeah.
It's one case, a case study of one person. But if you can get a few dozen and they consistently in a certain direction, that's really huge. And that's what's finally happened. It took a really, really long time because all these things were illegal for, however many decades, since the war on drugs and
oh God,
reefer madness. And yeah.
But here we had things all along that could break addiction. That's the most amazing thing. And so hopefully it will be legal, decriminalized, whatever it takes to have people use it to have a better quality of life. So it's good. And I'm glad to see the senator and our legislator working together on making sure that happens. And I hope it does pass this year. I hope it makes it all the way through. So, what an exciting life you've led. And you've managed to be left alone by the pharmaceutical companies. So you've managed to do your own thing.
Well, it was funny because we were, when I first started at Spalding, we were not affiliated with any of the medical schools. Rehabilitation medicine was sort of an outlier. And this is maybe too harsh, but nobody really cared what we did as long as we, the stroke patients got rehabbed and then somebody started a chronic pain program, and it began to get more serious. And we were able to do things because, we actually at the beginning, we had an inpatient pain unit at the inpatient hospital in Boston for a 4-week program, which was fabulous because people could really get immersed in it and they could taper off their pain meds and learn new modalities. And, the insurance companies at first covered it all. Not surprisingly, they began to pull away from their coverage, even though the cost savings were very obvious. Their mentality was they didn't want to spend, I think it was $30,000 for a month back then. They didn't want to spend $30,000 now, even though it would save them $200,000, over the next 10 years, because they were thinking just in short-term
treatment.
And that's sort of where the profit motive really not destroyed, but it's really damaged.
Yes, it has. It overtakes the main goal, which is to get people better. Now, with your techniques that you worked with these people that were in pain and were on pain medicine, what did you see? I mean, did it take all of 4 weeks to get them to a place where they didn't need pain meds, or were they able to just reduce? What were some of the results you had?
Yeah, it was a whole range of things. These were people who had been in pain for 5 or 10 years. So nobody was expecting, an overnight cure, but it was mainly to get them trained into new way of thinking and behaving so that they could continue afterwards. We had outpatient follow-up and, get them regular in their practices, and gradually the things would improve, like lesser medicine, being more functional. That was our main focus. We didn't ask people every day, what's your pain level on a scale of 0 to 10 kind of thing, because that just gets people focused in on the pain as the important thing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. What we found was if they can be focused on, how many times can they walk up and down the whole length of the corridor, or, functional activities, that's what would bring them out of the rut. And different people are different. Some people thrive from the physical therapy, aerobic exercise part of it. Some people thrive from the flexibility part. Occupational therapy taught them how to kind of be strategic about how they use their energy. And then, the mind-body approaches. Not everybody loved it. Some people, not surprising, they can't sit still to meditate. So we would adapt it. People would be working on the treadmill, monitoring their breath while they're on the treadmill. And that's easier for many people than just sitting still. So it was important to be flexible about it. The tapping was really, it became my favorite intervention. And some really cool things happen through tapping and energy-based stuff. I guess I can segue onto that for a little bit. But one of the strangest pain syndromes is what happens to somebody after an amputation that very commonly, the person feels like their hand is still there, even though it's been eliminated. But often, unfortunately, they'll have a very intense pain in that missing region that doesn't respond, to the usual medicines and whatnot. So we tried energy-based approaches there because the kind of the medical theory is that your brain recreates these old patterns and pathways, and it reorganizes the cortex to think that the limb is still there, even though it's just a phantom. So it's all a product of your brain. But some of the things that we did show that there's way more to the problem than that. And one example that really stands out in my mind was a young guy in his 30s who had to have his leg amputated above the knee because of a crush injury at work. And he didn't do that well with our regular pain program. So kind of out of desperation, I said, would you be willing to try an energy therapy? And, as I said, they're desperate, so he was going to try it. It's the one called therapeutic touch, which it looks like somebody is just waving their hands in the air, but what they're doing is smoothing out the biofield or the aura around the person. And so I had been trained in that. So I said, why don't you lie down on this the exam table, and I'll do this energy balancing thing. You can close your eyes and relax and just see what happens. So he was doing that, and I was sort of smoothing out over here. And it's the feeling that if you've ever played around, you can sort of sense by putting your hands closer and further apart at some distance, you'll begin to feel some kind of pressure when the biofields of each hand are bumping into each other. So I was doing that with him, and for some reason, I just kept that smoothing out process going, even down into where his leg was missing, into empty space at the bottom part of that leg. And two things happened. One is I could feel that same sensation where his leg was missing.
Wow.
There was nothing within a foot of my hand. I could feel it. And he opened his eyes and said, "What are you doing, Doc?" Because he could feel me touching his phantom limb, which isn't supposed to happen because there aren't any nerves there.
Yeah.
So what that said to me in that moment was that the phantom is an actual thing out there in empty space. It's now called the biofield, but it's some form of energy field that exists even when the physical body isn't there anymore. We don't know exactly what it is. It's not simply magnetic. It's not simply electrical, but you can manipulate it. And so, by smoothing it out, the pain drained out the bottom of his foot. In a kind of an unexpected twist, he actually asked me to stop before the pain disappeared. And I said, okay, but I thought you said it was making the pain go away. And he said, yes, it was, but he was worried that if the pain went away completely, he would feel like his leg was actually missing.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. So he wasn't psychologically ready.
Yeah.
He was young, he had been an athletic guy, and, he's proud of his body, and he just wasn't ready to accept it. So the pain actually served a positive psychological function for him. So, he's in charge. So that's how we left it. But it was a big teaching for me too, to realize that my goal isn't always what's what's appropriate. So just the whole idea of phantoms being the biofield, that's why it's a big part of the book that you mentioned is chapter on phantom limbs, because I think it's the clearest example that the biofield is real, that the medical model is missing a rather large boat.
Yeah, they are. Mm-hmm. Very big boat.
As my high school calculus teacher said to me when he handed back my exam, he said, "Eric, I think you missed a rather large boat here."
Oh, no.
but I think medicine is doing that too, and
yes,
like this will help to shift the balance, I hope.
I'm thrilled to hear you talk like this, that this shift is happening and will happen. I'm really happy to hear this. And I love tapping. I do it for myself and some of my clients. And I'm also fascinated with trauma release and some of the brain mapping techniques. that seems interesting as well, because as we know, if trauma's caught in the biofield or in the body, it's going to create problems.
Well, yeah, that's why it's been really important to have different ways of measuring brain activity to see what's happening before, during, and after. And actually for tapping to help it become more accepted in conventional medicine, it was really important to do some of these brain studies. There's a kind of MRI of the brain activity called functional MRI, which shows which parts are active and not active. Mm-hmm. And when we first finally began to get some fMRI studies of the brain during tapping, that really, you can't, the mainstream people couldn't argue with it. And something is happening to the brain. It does raise another question, though. Is the brain really the source of trauma, or is it responding to the psychological, emotional, energetic stuff that's happening? Again, it's like, which comes first?
Chicken or egg kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It is like that. So I used to think that the brain mechanisms explained everything that's going on, and it all comes down to neurotransmitters. But I think it starts with the energy shifts first, and then the brain responds. Like, for example, with these phantom limb patients, they can respond. The pain can dissipate within hours of doing if you find that there's often a trauma attached to the phantom pain, which isn't surprising. That amputation is traumatic. And if it's the result of an automobile accident or something, there's a lot of psychological trauma there. And surgeons aren't going to deal with that. But if somebody does and releases the psychological trauma and the energetic trauma, the patient will literally go. When we do that, that's an energy release, and I think that happens first. That's what makes the pain diminish. And secondary to that, there are changes in the brain. So I think the brain gets too much credit, actually. Yeah. It's kind of funny, but I think the brain gets too much credit for what happens.
Yes, exactly. Well, there is a consciousness with the body, and I think that's what you're also talking about, too. It's the spiritual connection, but there's consciousness with that as well. And what I love about what you're doing and what you have been doing for so many years is you're really empowering people. You're really giving it back to them and saying, you can do this. You can heal yourself. Because so many of us have been raised on old-fashioned medical thinking that you go to the doctor and they're going to fix you. And that's not really what happens, is it?
Well, that Patricia, that's a really important point. And that was sort of the key thing about our pain management program was it was called self-management. So it wasn't like the doctor was the savior and who would come in and rescue the patient. First off, it wasn't even the doctor at the top of the pyramid. We had a big team, and the doctor and the physical therapist, occupational therapist, nurse, psychologist. So nobody was on a pedestal, but it was all more like, we didn't call it that then, but it was more like coaching, that you would teach techniques to the person, empower them to take over their own health issues, and they could take over. And, we would support them and brainstorm with them and fine tune it for them. But it really came from them. And that approach isn't for everybody. Not everybody wants to have that responsibility. A lot of people are sort of trained with the doctor up on the pedestal and do whatever they say. And that's an attitude that it served its purpose for a while, but that's part of the whole old medical model. It goes along with pharmaceuticals, that the doctors are the only ones who can write prescriptions for these magic substances that will make things get all better. And, often they do. I've taken prescription medication. It's not like I don't do it, but you got to find a way to balance it. And,
well, you do. I mean, prescription medication is fine, just like emergency medicine is fine. But we also have to have choices. And that's what you bring and you have brought to so many people, is choices to look at this differently, to experience their bodies differently, and to take back the power so that they can feel better. I mean, look, drugs are great when you need them, but we all know the side effects come at a huge price.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
There's that.
A very, very cynical view of prescription medication is pharmaceuticals are toxic substances that occasionally have beneficial side effects.
That's true.
How's that for a negative spin on things?
It's true. Goodness me, it is.
Yeah.
I had an experience once with a form of therapeutic touch, and I'm trying to remember what they called it. They all take on different names, personas and all of that. But it was when I was in my 20s a million years ago, and I, for some reason, suffered from this absolute terror. So if I was in my house and my husband wasn't there, nobody was around, I was by myself, and night would fall, this terror would overtake me.
Yeah.
No idea where it was from. And this woman, I remember her name was Linda Napier. She was trained in this technique. And she worked on me. And what the technique involved was holding her hands on a spot that she perceived to be stuck with something. And she did that. And I didn't tell her about this night terror kind of thing. It was embarrassing. I was like, God, I'm in my 20s. What's wrong with me? I'm in a safe place and my doors are locked. And what is going on? Well, after that one session, I never had it happen again.
Wow.
It was gone. And I was so grateful.
Yeah.
And such a simple thing.
Did you come up with an awareness of what was the source of that terror?
There were a few things that came to mind, not afterwards, but actually more recently that came to mind as to why this would have gotten stuck in my field of energy. So I kept reacting over and over again.
Right.
And it was horribly uncomfortable and embarrassing. Like I said, it's like, oh my God, I didn't want to tell anybody I had this going on. It was wrong, But yeah, it was linked to some things that happened in my childhood. I did link it to something that happened when I was 10 years old. So all of that finally came up, but it took a long time. I'm much older now, and it took all those years to have it make sense.
Well, that's a good illustration of the symptom was alleviated, but you weren't fully healed until you understood where it came from and could release it at that level too.
Right.
And sometimes it can take years, the process.
Yes, exactly. And I'm very impatient, but I couldn't get to it until, probably a couple of years ago is when I started to get the memories coming back.
Yeah.
So, but it was an amazing experience. And I encourage people, like I know you do, to go and find that practitioner or that whatever it is, whether it's tapping or trauma release or therapeutic touch or meditation or heart map.
Yeah.
They're all wonderful.
And there are some, some of the programs require quite a bit of training to get certified. And Healing Touch is one. The Barbara Brennan program is another. Therapeutic Touch is another. I don't know if I'm getting in hot water, but some approaches like Reiki are a little bit too quick to have people say they're a Reiki level 1 master or something like that.
I agree. Yes.
You can do something very useful and helpful, no doubt about it, after a couple of weekends, but it takes a little bit longer to get the hang of it.
Yeah, and I think a lot has to be said about who the practitioner is, because it's like this practitioner, Linda, there was something very special about her, where she really knew how to hone in to these places in people's energy fields and bodies. And not every practitioner has that ability, even though they've had the training.
Right.
So obviously you're a very special practitioner because you have the ability to sense energy as well.
Well, it's ironic. I wasn't as energy sensitive as many other people are. And when I was doing my original training with Rosenbrier, it was actually in Williamstown. And that has a lot to do with why I'm out here in Western Mass now. But there was a group of about maybe 40 regulars who came back every time. And, for a number of years, we did a lot together. And honestly, I would say I was the dumbest kid in the class. I could explain things and conceptualize it, but I couldn't feel stuff and
No.
make stuff up until much later on. And, that's just different people have different.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
So,
but you have this knowledge, obviously, because of your training too. You
yeah,
you have
yeah.
academic knowledge that's unbeatable, and then you have joined in with all of these other therapies to make a difference, and you obviously have. Must have a really good feeling about your work. It's tremendous.
Well, I mean, I didn't really have that feeling until I was able to step back and put this book together, because part of the book is sort of telling my story and, how I developed all this. And you don't realize a lot of stuff while it's happening and while you're in the middle of it. But
Yeah.
a lot of, am I allowed to use 4-letter words on this show?
Yes, why not?
A lot of shit hit the fan while I was doing these things. And, I was the lightning rod for a lot of off-putting things that happened, but
Mm.
it just seemed like the best thing to do. So I'm really glad, I'm not like say John Kabat-Zinn or somebody who's really, world famous and justifiably so. I was more like behind the scenes, a prod here and a push there and a pull there. But it is very gratifying to see.
Absolutely. You're a trailblazer. You were doing this when nobody else in your medical profession really was.
No,
Chanel, can we put up Rick's book again, please? Got this beautiful cover on it. There it is. The Mystery of Life, Energy, Biofield Healing, Phantom Limbs, Group Energetics, and Gaia Consciousness.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. And that website also has more information and resources. But there's also a blog that I've just started putting together, so if people want to sign up to receive.
Oh, great.
Like monthly updates. I promise there won't be regular spam, but every once in a while I'll have something to say.
Well, I'm going to sign up. I think our whole audience should, because I know you're going to be offering us more insights, and we need all the insights we can get, especially today.
Well, actually, the last blog post was about the leading up to the eclipse, because there were some subtle energy aspects of the eclipse that I wondered about and predicted, and my next blog post will talk about the results.
Oh, good.
How's that for a teaser?
Oh, I'm signing up tonight. No question. Rick, this has been wonderful having you here tonight. What an exciting conversation. Congratulations on your book. I'm hoping you'll do book number 2.
Yeah, I would say don't hold your breath, but I appreciate your comments and your and support, and I've enjoyed the conversation as well. But I don't know. It takes a lot of energy to write a book. And,
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, maybe your blog will suffice. It will keep us engaged in finding new and exciting ways to know ourselves and to feel better, which we all want to do.
Yeah, it sounds good. Sounds good.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you again. And everybody will be back next week with another great show. I'm not quite sure which one we're doing next week, but believe me, it'll be great. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.